The United States is in trouble, big trouble. Our economy is collapsing. We can't borrow and print all the time like the feds do without having repercussions. It is going to crash. It's a matter of time. Not to mention the spread of socialism. Crime is way up. We have some serious problems, and our foundations are crumbling. Foundations both mentally and physically, mind you. We're in trouble. And when it comes to the United States, there's certain places that are far worse off than others. And maybe you live in one of these places, or possibly a state like this. Maybe you're looking for a bug out location. Then this video is for you, because there are certainly states that you do not want to be in when crap hits the fan. And a lot of these states, we're seeing a mass exodus. There's a massive declining in populations in these states, and for a reason. First off, for example, New York. And when we think of New York, of course, we think of New York City. But it's only one part of the state. In fact, a very small part of the state. Upstate New York, Western New York, absolutely gorgeous and very, very good people living out there. But as we see in a lot of states that have a big city or two big cities, the cities kind of like run things, suck all the money in, the taxes and the zoning and all this other stuff, makes it so it's very hard to live in that specific state. New York is a perfect example of this, because even if you don't live in the city, you could live literally hundreds of miles from the city, and your life is very difficult because it's so expensive because of the city. Illinois, same thing. Chicago. And don't get me started there. And don't get me wrong, I love New York City and I love Chicago. I used to visit them all the time, but not so much anymore, because we see crime rampant. We see taxes going up. We see problems. There's political corruptiveness in these states, well, because of these cities. And it makes it so, again, like in Illinois, lots of good places in Illinois, lots of good people there, but it's very difficult to live there because of Chicago. And everybody knows about California. The cost of living there is so high, it's astronomical. It's absolutely insane. And if you live there, you know what I'm talking about, because there's a mass exodus of people leaving the state because of this. Taxes, housing prices, way through the roof. Not to mention, we see cities like, for example, San Francisco. I love San Francisco, but we're not even talking about how expensive it is, but how all these crimes are running rampant there, and they refuse to prosecute the people when they're committing those crimes. And we're seeing the same things in Pennsylvania too. And it's sad, because Pennsylvania went through a very difficult time after the coal mines and stuff shut down, but they've been making a comeback, but now it's starting to head back downhill. And it's not just the rural areas. The rural areas are in trouble too, but of course we see like Pittsburgh, which I love Pittsburgh, and we see Philadelphia. I used to live in Philadelphia. Fantastic places, but being in those cities, forget it. It's difficult to live there. Not even talk about prices, but just the crime and everything. And it's the same thing. It's bleeding over into the rest of the state. And just to understand, this has nothing to do with the people or the beauty of these states. They're absolutely gorgeous. I love these states. I've lived in 3 of them because the people there, I literally love the people there. But the states, there's no way I could ever live in those states again. And maybe you're in that situation where you do live in one of those states. That's not a place you want to be. But stay to the end, because there's something I want you to really see about this in these states. But it's not just the states that have big cities. We see states like Mississippi, Louisiana, West Virginia. They're going through some serious troubles right now. And people living there are having a very difficult time. Because right now they can't make enough to live. They literally can't survive. Taxes, poor education, or healthcare they can't afford. But why did I put them on the list? Because right now I'm telling you, if you live in New York or California, my recommendations, get out of Dodge. But what about like West Virginia? West Virginia is a fantastic state. Definitely rural, definitely to where you can live off grid. And it's great, but why didn't I include that in the list of problems? Because they do have problems. Because here's the thing, right now living in states like New York and California, horrible. Taxes and everything else, but when crap hits the fan, those states are going to continue to be horrible because of the exodus from the cities. When you look at states like Mississippi or Alabama or West Virginia, well, there are cities there, but nothing like those major cities. And therefore, you know what? They may not be bad to plan out to bug out to when crap hits the fan. Because those 4 big states I did mention, what do they have in common? Major city areas. And I mean major. It is not where you want to be. 80% of America lives in these areas, urban areas, not necessarily in the center of the city, but in the suburbs. No farms in the suburbs. That's what suburbs used to be, by the way. That used to be the farmland that got taken over by housing and development. And now the farmlands are way out in the middle of nowhere, but in the cities, 80% of people live in those environments, 80%. And if those cities go down, which I'll go back to the beginning of the video, they are going to go down. Our economy is going to collapse. Here come all the people from those areas coming out into the country. So if you live in a specific area surrounding those cities, I'm not even talking about the suburbs, but in the country, like an hour or 2 outside the cities, they're coming your way. But understand, being off-grid, self-sustainable, being able to grow a garden is what you're shooting for. And there are some states that are very good for this, but unfortunately, even if there's not big city centers, there's some states that are not good for this. Let me go through a few of those. For example, the Southwest. And the main reason being is, even though there are cities there, it's a very dry, arid environment. There's already lack of water there. What happens if crap hits the fan? All of that mechanism to bring the water to the cities and all that stuff is gone. And growing your garden, being self-sustainable is almost non-existent in that scenario. And even the northern states, you may want to reconsider. Obviously, winters can be brutal. I live in Michigan. I live it up here in the middle of nowhere, Michigan, but the winters can be difficult. But it's not simply just a matter of having snow. It's a matter of keeping warm. Because, you know what? Most houses rely on what? Natural gas or propane or electric heat, which of course gets super expensive. All that infrastructure is going to disappear and crap hits the fan. So in our house, we cut wood. Yay, good for us, but it takes 20 face cords to heat our home. And the thing is that wood doesn't appear out of nowhere. It does grow in the forest, but we have to use chainsaws to cut it. Those chainsaws need gas. We use our wood splitter, which uses gas. And I know that you can actually use a long saw. We have that too. We have access to cut wood. But 20 face cords at our house to be able to keep warm, we're going to be spending most of the summer just cutting wood to keep warm, not to mention trying to protect our home, grow a garden, everything else. So the northern states, because of the winter, may not be the best choice. We're doing it. We're enduring it. But I know a lot of people would not want to deal with trying to keep warm alone. And of course, we have the East Coast. There are certainly spots in the East Coast you could go to. But overall, the population is so dense on the East Coast. And I'm not saying there aren't places you could set up some kind of off-grid place. I'm sure you could. But it's just more difficult out east. The population centers, you have to get away from those because when the people come out of the cities, they're going to come to where you are. But when we look at as far as people on the East Coast, it's not necessarily the population centers you have to worry about. You have to worry about living off-grid, right? Because if crap hits the fan, what are you going to do? And you want to prepare ahead of time off-grid. And there are literally some states that will not allow you to be off-grid. Granted, when crap hits the fan, nobody's going to check on that, but you do have to set it up ahead of time. And some states include like Florida, for example, Illinois, Maryland, New York, California. And there you go again. A lot of these states where I already mentioned are making a mass exodus will not allow you in specific areas, and sometimes the whole state will not allow you to be off-grid. They literally, in their law, require you to be connected to the grid. And again, if crap hits the fan, what are you going to do? Nobody's going to be checking on you, but you want to have all the stuff set up ahead of time, not when crap hits the fan. So where to go? Where's the best place to go? I have a number one location for you, by the way. Of course, you have to stick with it in just a minute. And it's not my opinion. I love Michigan, but I know a lot of people wouldn't even dare come up to Michigan. I do have a place for you, and it's done by research to tell you the best place to go. Because again, I'll tell you, it's a place you could set up your place ahead of time, but it's also going to be away from those population centers. For example, Idaho is an excellent choice. A lot of people choose Idaho. People also love, for example, southern Missouri. Honestly, the southern states in general are great for this. Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, away from Atlanta, obviously, Florida, the Carolinas, Virginia, and of course, people love Tennessee. I love Tennessee. Oh, love it, but just to visit. And that's just my personal preference. I hate the heat. I can't stand it. Granted, crap hits the fan. I may not like the snow so much anymore either, having to cut that wood, but I'm not a heat kind of person. Yeah, to each their own. But those states are fantastic. Again, right now, they may not be the best place to live because of lack of jobs and maybe the standard of living isn't very high. It's difficult. We get that. But crap hits the fan, they may be the best places to go for this reason, because when you see a difficult time not being able to provide for a job, that means sparse population, which is perfect because, granted, Virginia has some pretty huge population centers. But a lot of those states I mentioned may have a couple cities, but you can easily get far away from those cities and those states. Not to mention it's warm, longer growing season, always a good thing. So where's the number one place to go? Well, honestly, before I continue, I want you to put in the comments below, what do you think that number one place is? Or even more so, have you set out a place to go to? A bug out location? Maybe you live in that location. That'd be fantastic. All right, so here we go. The number one place to go to, and again, this is based on research, is Arkansas. And when we traveled around the country looking for the place that we wanted to live, we seriously considered Arkansas. But again, it's very hot. We're not hot kind of people. But man, the state is fantastic. On the most part, very sparse populations. There are some city centers, but it's not even, again, my opinion, but literally the research has been put out because of lack of military bases nearby, because of the sparse population. The list goes on and on. Arkansas is the number one place for preppers, for homesteaders, for people wanting to be off-grid to bug out to, for example, Arkansas. It's vast forest, perfect farmland, a lot of beautiful, rich places you can grow food and have animals, and the laws are very relaxed there. Well, not to mention being sparse and out in the population, there's a lot of people with the same kind of like mindset there too. Arkansas is fantastic for this. Again, we're Michiganders. That's what we do. We love being up in Michigan. But honestly, Arkansas was on our list. And if you're looking for a place, that's probably the place to go. Statistically speaking, that is the #1 place that they say preppers and homesteaders should be. If you can handle the heat, maybe you do that. Maybe you're already in Arkansas. Why don't you put in the comments below, how do you like living there? And do you agree with the fact that it's going to be the place to be when crap hits the fan? Thanks for watching, everybody. I appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.